Hi everyone, I'm Miranda and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm talking about shopping from my bookshelves. I have so many books, as you've probably gathered if you've been watching my channel for a while. And although I've read loads of the books on my bookshelves, I certainly haven't read them all. And I was thinking that during this time of self-isolating and social distancing, it would be a great opportunity to shop from my bookshelves and to hopefully read a few more books that I already own. Of course, I'm also doing my best to support independent bookshops during this difficult time, and I'm going to link as many of the books as I can to hive.co.uk, which is a website I discovered fairly recently, and it's a great place to order books from because they support independent bookshops. So I love that. However, much as I love buying books, I also do want to try and read more of the books I already own. So this is an episode on shopping from my bookshelves. I've pulled out a pile of books that I have on my shelves but I haven't read yet and I really want to get to. So let me show them all to you. The first one is called Fair Girls and Grey Horses. Memories of a Country Childhood by Christine, Diana and Josephine Pullen-Thompson. I loved the Pullen-Thompson sisters when I was young. They all wrote amazing pony books and I was obsessed with ponies when I was little, even though I didn't ride at all. I just loved reading about horses. And some of my very favourite books were the Phantom Horse books, which I think were by Christine Pullen-Thompson. But I read widely from all of the sisters. They all wrote pony books. And this is actually a memoir about their childhood and presumably about how they all started writing. And I really want to read it. I love memoirs. I loved these authors when I was young. And I think it will be really fascinating. It says, "Are your twins normal?" Mrs. Pullen-Thompson was asked. "Good God, I hope not," she retorted. The twins were Diana and Christine, who with their elder sister Josephine wrote more than 150 books, which have sold in their millions around the world. 50 years after the joint publication of their first book, the siblings wrote about their extraordinary childhood with lovable but often unreliable animals and unforgettable humans. I think this sounds so good. It almost has a little bit of a My Family and Other Animals vibe I'm feeling from it already. So hopefully it'll be a fun, entertaining read. So I want to get to this. Next, I really would like to read Good in a Bed Garden Writings by Ursula Buchan. Ursula Buchan was John Buchan's granddaughter, and he wrote the 39 Steps, which is one of my very favourite adventure stories. And I heard her in conversation with Penelope Lively at a Slightly Foxed Readers event. I think it was last year. And I really enjoyed their conversation. They're both avid gardeners, and it made me really want to read Ursula Buchan's book about gardening. And on the back it says, Ursula Buchan is one of those rare gardening writers who are read with pleasure by people who have never picked up a trowel or pruned a rose, in fact by people who don't have gardens at all. Well, that's me. So this sounds like the perfect book for me because I am such an armchair gardener. I have to say, I love reading about gardens. I love like going out and looking at gardens, but I don't have a gardener. I don't have a garden, and I also tend to kill any house plant I'm ever given. So I don't think gardening is in my future, but I do love reading about it. So I'm looking forward to getting to this book. And then a bit of a Buchan connection. I love the books by O. Douglas, and her real name was Anna Buchan, and she was John Buchan's sister. She lived in Scotland. Her writing is very similar to D.E. Stevenson's books, so if you love D.E. Stevenson's stories, then you would really like O. Douglas, I'm sure. I adore her writing, the very quiet, gentle, charming tales. And this is one I haven't read yet. It's called Anne and Her Mother by O. Douglas, and I'm sure this will be just as charming a read as all her other books have been so far, so I'm looking forward to reading this one myself. And then this is a book I've wanted to read for ages. It's The Constant Nymph by Margaret Kennedy. This was such a popular book when it was first published. I can't remember the exact date. So it was first published in 1929, and it was extremely controversial at the time. It says, avant-garde composer Albert Sanger lives in a ramshackle chalet in the Swiss Alps. I love anything set in Switzerland, so one reason I want to read this. Surrounded by his circus of assorted children, admirers, and slatternly mistress. The family and their home life may be chaotic, but visitors fall into an enchantment and the claims of respectable life or upbringing fall away. When Sanger dies, his circus must break up and each find a more conventional way of life. But 14-year-old Teresa is already deeply in love. For her, the outside world holds nothing but tragedy. This sounds like such a curious book, and I really am intrigued to read it. And it's the sort of book that's mentioned in like classic school stories that I love from the first half of the 20th century as the sort of like illicit book that the girls would try to read and sort of risk expulsion if they were caught with. So I really am intrigued to read The Constant Nymph. And then this is a book I'm really looking forward to getting to. It's a non-fiction book, The Easternmost House by Juliet Blaxland. And it's about a house on the sort of easternmost corner of England that's right on the cliff. I think it says in June 2015 the house was 50 paces from the edge. Now it is 25 paces away. And very sadly, I recently read that the cliff underneath the house has now crumbled and the house isn't there anymore. So that will make reading this book even more poignant, and it's written by the woman that lived in this house, and I've just heard that it's really brilliant, so I'm looking forward to getting to this. This is another non-fiction book that I picked up in Devon when I was in Devon last spring, actually, and it was fitting because it's set in Devon. I think it's a blend of memoir and nature writing. It's called The Grass Ling by Elizabeth Jane Burnett, and I've heard such good things about it. I have to admit I was also really attracted by the beautiful cover. I mean, it is just stunning. But I picked it up in Devon because it's because it's set in Devon. It's all about Devon. So I am intrigued to read this one. Okay, another book that I bought fairly recently but haven't got to yet is In Love with George Eliot. And it's by Cathy O'Shaughnessy. I hope that's how you say her last name. And this is fiction, but I think that Cathy O'Shaughnessy has really researched a lot about George Eliot's life, and part of it is written from George Eliot's perspective, and then I think it also swaps to a present day setting. So it just sounds like a really interesting read. I love books that sort of teach you a bit more about classic writers, and I think that, like I said, this one is meant to have been really well researched. I've picked it up a few times and at first I wasn't too sure about it, but then I read a really good review of the book and that's what made me finally buy it, but I'm yet to read it, so I really want to get to this one and see what I think of it myself. Another memoir I picked up is The Way to the Sea, The Forgotten Histories of the Thames Estuary by Caroline Crampton. This one sounded really good. It says, raised on its banks, so on the banks of the Thames, and an avid sailor, Caroline Crampton sets out to rediscover the enigmatic pull of the Thames by following its course from the river's source in a small village in Gloucestershire, through the short central stretch, beloved of Londoners and tourists alike, to the point where it merges with the North Sea. As she navigates the river's ever-shifting tidal waters, she seeks out the stories behind its unique landmarks, from the vast Victorian pumping stations that carried away the capital's waste and the shiny barrier that holds the sea at bay, to the Napoleonic-era forts that stand on marshy ground as eerie relics of past invasions. It sounds really interesting, and I really loved the book Mudlarking that came out last year, and I think I thought that this would be quite a nice companion read to that book in a way, because reading Mudlarking made me even more interested in the history of the Thames. So I'm looking forward to getting to this one. And then this book, a friend of mine recommended to me. It's called Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. And apparently this has been made an IB text, the International Baccalaureate, I did the IB in high school when I was young, so I'm always quite interested in what new texts come on their curriculum, and apparently this is a book that's been introduced to the curriculum, and it's meant to be really, really good, and a sort of Japanese classic, so I'm looking forward to reading this too. So it's nice and slim, so I should be able to read this quickly. And then, yes, I'm really excited to read this. It's I'll Never Be Young Again by Daphne du Maurier. I've never read this Daphne du Maurier, and I really don't know much about it. I think it's about a man and his father, by the sound of it, and it's partly set in Bohemian Paris, which I always love books set in Paris, so I'm interested to read this for that reason. But I also love Daphne du Maurier, Rebecca, My Cousin Rachel, two of my very favourite novels. I think this must be quite an early novel, so I'm not sure if it will really stand up as well as the others. And some of her books do get very strange, so I'm just intrigued to read this one and see what it's like. This one I really want to get to soon because it's actually set during Lent, so it would be a really great read for right now. It's called The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey, and it's a mystery set in medieval England. And I've read some really rave reviews about this book. Again, it's quite slim, so it shouldn't take me too long to read it, so I really want to settle down with this very soon. I'm a member of the London Library, and in the London Library, in one of the entrances, they display books that some of their members have written, and I'm pretty sure this is how I heard about this book. I think it was one of the ones displayed. It's The Garden of Lost and Found by Harriet Evans, and I was also really taken with the attractive cover, and it sounds really interesting. It sounds a bit like a Kate Morton book to me. Part of it is set, I think, in like 1919. Yes, 1919, in a sort of large house in the English countryside, and Liddy Horner discovers her husband, the world-famous artist Sir Edward Horner, burning his best-known painting, The Garden of Lost and Found, days before his sudden death. And then I think part of the novel is set in the present day, or the fairly present day, and it's about solving this mystery of why this famous artist burnt his painting before dying. So I just thought that sounded like a really intriguing premise, and it reminded me a bit of the Kate Morton sort of style book. I love Kate Morton, so I thought this sounds like it could be my cup of tea. So I picked it up, but I still haven't read it, and I do want to read it. Yes, so hopefully I'll get to that one soon. This is a biography I really want to read, The Life and Loves of E. Nesbit, author of The Railway Children by Eleanor Fitzsimmons. I love the E. Nesbit books. I mean, I adored The Railway Children. I adored Five Children and It when I was young. So I can't wait to read this. I already know that she had, in some ways, a very difficult life. And yeah, I think that this will make such a fascinating read, and I can't wait to find out more about her, because I know she had a really, really interesting life. So I can't wait to get to this biography. But anyway, those are some of the books that I've shopped from my shelves. Do let me know if you've read any of these, or if you're tempted to read any of these. Also let me know if you'd like to join me in shopping from your bookshelves, and what books you might pull off and be inspired to read. For those of us who are all home a bit more at the moment. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Do give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and you can subscribe to my channel by clicking my face. It pops up around here on the screen. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye!